Welcome everyone to today's video, Basking in Apricity. It's a KuroKen winter special, and as a reminder, it is also the collaboration between these amazing channels. It was so much fun working with all of them. How the collaboration works, we had a list of words, and we all had to write a text inspired by these. If you want the details, please look at the announcement video of the collaboration. And now, let's start with the video. I hope you will like it. Have you ever had struggles finding good Haikyuu merch or anime merch in general? Because I for sure did. It can be hard. But this shop offers amazing merch. Like, I'm literally obsessed with the Haikyuu merch. They have the cutest hoodies ever. Now, if you want to get 10% off, click the link in the description. They offer me a collaboration, which is literally amazing. And you support my channel this way. So, win-win. Let's go. Kuro, it's getting cold. Kenma whined as the Tala dragged him through the icy forest. He hid his face in his scarf and tried making himself as small as possible in hopes he could simply disappear into the comfortable warmth of his jacket. Just a little further. Liar, you said that already half an hour ago. Kuro laughed and reached for his hand again, pulling him closer to his side. Look around, it's so pretty. Kenma just glared at him, shivering. I can't feel my legs anymore. Natala seemed to think about it for a moment before smiling widely. Alright. Before Kim had the chance to so much as yelp, Kuro lifted him into his arms and started running. I'll carry you then. Kuro. His protest went unheard, and after a while of settling into his steady rhythm, he relaxed. This wasn't too bad. After all, Kuro was warm. He snuggled closer and sighed. If only he'd be running home instead of deeper into the frozen green. From his place in Kuro's arms, Kenma cracked his eyes open slightly. Above them stretched a ceiling of frost-covered branches laced in ice and snow. They stood strong and high against a clear blue sky, cloudless for the first time in weeks. It almost looked unreal. Everything seemed covered in lights and glitter as the tiny crystals of ice sparkled under the winter sun. It was eerily silent around them, as though this whole place was frozen in time. The only thing disturbing the internal peace was two passers-by, wandering the hidden path. Kuro's steps formed a steady rhythm on the frozen ground and echoed from the tree trunks around them, accompanied by the crunching sound of snow every time he made a step. Kenma didn't know how much time had passed when Kuro suddenly stopped. He was breathing heavily, his breath forming clouds of fog against the cold as he stared at something ahead of them. Asmala didn't yet know what caught his attention, but was fairly certain that it would pale in comparison to Kuro. The raven's eyes sparkled with joy, the warm brown lit up with excitement, and he smiled happily. Despite being exhausted, he barely seemed out of energy. His cheeks and ears were dusted in a rosy pink from the cold, and Kenma was sure so were his own. He also knew that it wasn't just the cold making his face warm with a delicate blush, but there was no need to admit that. Kenma, look. He made a few more steps forward before slowly lowering Kenma from his arms and onto his feet. An involuntary whine of protest escaped his throat as Kuro's warmth vanished. He was so focused on the other that he failed to notice the ground Kuro had placed him on and slipped. With a yelp, he fell, His arms flared through the air as he reached for Kuro in a panic. Two strong arms caught him effortlessly as Kuro's laugh echoed through the woods. The blonde glared at him. Careful. His voice was deep and laced with amusement as he gently helped him to stand upright. His warm hazel eyes were so lively and reassuring that they almost seemed out of place in the frozen scenery. It had something enchanting, and before he even noticed, Kemma was already staring at him for way longer than intended. He got lost in the depths of his dark eyes, sprinkled with reflections from the sunlight bursting when it hit the tiny ice crystals around them. The joy hadn't just inhabited Kuro's voice, but his appearance as well. A bright smile spread from the cold kissed and reddened cheeks, and his hair seemed to playfully embrace the breeze, dancing around them in a light-hearted manner. He got so lost in the sight, captured by the beauty of a moment he didn't dare to imagine sharing with anyone else, that, at first, he was blind to what Kuro actually wanted to show him. Behind the forest, behind a never-ending stroll under ice-laced trees and through snow-covered bushes, lay a lake. Frozen and clear. Across danced snowflakes in the wind in blinding beauty as they threw the light of a warm winter sun right back at them. So, what do you think? He was speechless. How do you respond to something like this? How even did Kuro find this place? Amber met brown as he looked at the taller again at a lack of words. He wasn't sure what Kuro expected of him and simply waited for the other to guide him. As if reading his mind, the sly cat in a chivalrous gesture held out his hand for Kemma to take and slowly led him onto the ice. Kuro. His voice trembled with the cold and a hint of nervousness as he begrudgingly followed the raven's lead. Don't worry, the ice is safe. It is cold enough and has been frozen for days now. Look, it's clear. He did, and Kuro was right. Under the thin layer of snow, the ice shimmered almost completely translucent, giving away the cold and most importantly dark waters beneath. It did little to ease his worries as he held onto Kuro in a vice. It wasn't so much that he feared breaking in and drowning, ending in a horrid and freezing death, though that was certainly something to be kept in mind. Rather, it was the ice itself that presented a terrifying challenge. Years of volleyball couldn't have prepared him for the hardships of holding his balance on the slippery surface, and worst of all, looking so stupid in the process. If Kuro had been gentle and understanding before, guiding him by his hand and whispering soft reassurances right next to his ear, he was now the complete opposite. In a matter of minutes, after Kim had fallen a significant amount of time, despite Kuro's help, the older couldn't help but let the laugh slip and didn't stop ever since. It was the cruelest kind of betrayal, and Kemma threw a scorching glare at his direction whenever he wasn't fighting against gravity. Gravity was already stupid when he had a firm ground to stand on. Now it was pure hell. He felt like the victim of some underdeveloped, broken game dynamics as he fought himself up from the icy surface again, only to see that he had barely moved an inch. Kuro, on the other hand, could almost be described as graceful in the way he slid across the ice, seemingly commanding the elements at his will. It wasn't fair. Defeated, Kemma let himself fall onto his butt again. If it wasn't for the shame of being called a coward, he would have preferred this very position from the very beginning, though even after the attempt, this was hardly any better. He was satisfied just watching the toilet from the sidelines, yet he would have preferred it if it wasn't so cold, and if he hadn't made a fool out of himself beforehand, and if he perhaps had one of his games with him. Just one. Kenma, come on, don't just sit there. It's fun. Yeah, but only because he managed to stay upright. Either Kuro had cheated and unlocked a secret skill that was unavailable to the usual player, or he simply hadn't tripped over the same spot that caused him to lag. Kuro laughed as though he knew exactly what was going on in his head. Come, I'll help you. You tried that before. Well, now I'm serious. Come. He whined and, very reluctantly, let Kuro pull him up by his arm again. Immediately the anxious feeling crept up his spine as Kenma felt his feet slip. What in the absolute hell was supposed to be fun about this? To him, this was torture. There was no safe strategy. You had to trust your instincts and what you felt when moving forward, your balance, the way the slightest shift of weight would affect your stand, and so on. Unfortunately, rather than Kuro actually teaching and securing Kenma as he originally planned, it seemed as though Kenma's bad luck and misfortune had transported to Kuro as well. It hadn't even been a minute until both of them found themselves laying on the cold surface, faces turned towards the sun and fairly content in their position. After all, laying on the ice was way safer than walking on it, and cooled the already blossoming bruises. Next to him, the light-hearted laugh of Kuro echoed through the frozen forest, filling it with delight. The raven snuck his arms around him and pulled him closer. If you were a black cat, I'd say you're a bringer of misfortune. His deep chuckle resonated in his chest as Kenma pressed his head against it. You think I bring misfortune? I said if. Kenma propped his chin up on Kuro's chest and looked into those deep eyes that seemed to enchant him whenever their gaze met. The surrounding forest, frozen as if it was taken straight from a fairy tale, didn't help that feeling at all. Gently, Kuro's hands wandered up to his face and cupped his cheeks. He caressed the reddened skin and traced the shape of his lips with tantalizing, feather-light touches. Kenma, you're my greatest fortune to me. Nothing can compare to my luck of ever meeting you, or the moment you agreed to take my hand and walk forth with me together. Kenma didn't know what to reply and only looked up at him with bright amber eyes that seemed to light up with every word Kuro spoke. His speech was taken further from him as the raven leaned down and brought their lips together in a tender kiss. Kenma's eyes fluttered shut as he leaned into the sensation. A sudden warmth seemed to flood his body from where they were connected and banished the cold at the furthest edge of his consciousness, too out of reach to care. He felt the warmth of the sunrays on his neck as his hair parted as he leaned forward to chase after Kuro's touch. When they parted, Kenma's eyes were glossy with longing. He didn't want to let go. Never again. And so they stayed, huddled up for a little longer on the small lake in the frozen forest, hidden away from the world. Within this small moment, it felt as though time had suddenly stopped applying to them, as if they could spend there forever here at this small lake, the whole scenery laced with an icy flare. When he looked around now, and as he saw the first tiny snowflakes dancing from the sky again as it began snowing, Kenma felt as though they had been trapped in a snow globe. It was too beautiful, too surreal to be a place that existed in reality. Yet, he was perfectly content staying in this icy prison if that meant sharing this moment with Kuro forever. Thank you all for watching to the end. As you all know, this was a collaboration and one I couldn't have been more excited for. So many great channels worked on this, which in this case meant everybody made a video based on the same words as explained in the announcement video, if you want to check that out again for more detail. And all the channels that did participate are linked in the description below, so check it out. Look at their results, which is what I'm gonna do now because I'm super excited to see what everyone came up with. I will perhaps do some reaction videos to theirs, just so that you can also see what my reaction was. And now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day. Leave suggestions for future collaborations in the description, not in the description, in the comments. I got this. Bye!